Okay, hi everyone. How's it going? This is immigration attorney Moumita. Thank you so much for joining me live. I'm here to talk about my favorite subjects, which is immigration. And there are actually several reasons why I love the work that I do and why I believe in it so strongly. So number one, I love being an immigration lawyer because immigration is so important to the vitality of this country, and it is what makes this nation great. Number two, immigration is really tough. And there's nothing that I like more than being able to find solutions wherever I can to help people in need of immigration solutions. And number three, I just love being able to meet all the people that I do and give them some hope and give them some dreams of a better future. So with that being said, thank you for joining me. My name is Moumita Rahman. I am an immigration lawyer. I have been a lawyer for the past 11 years, and I'm based in New York, but I help clients all over the US. A frequent question that I get from people is, can you still help me if I live in Arizona or if I live in California or if I live in Texas? And the answer is yes, I can still help you. And the majority of cases that I have are not in court. If you have a case in court, that may be a different issue. But if you don't have a case in court, then you probably have the sort of case that I can help you with right now. And in fact, I actually travel for a lot of my cases. I go to interviews for green cards all over the country with my clients. And there's nothing better than I love to do than to meet my clients in person. So thank you for joining. And my topic of the day is, if you are in a marriage to a US citizen where the marriage has gone wrong, where the marriage has gone south, how long should you wait before you call a lawyer? And I think if you've been watching me, you know what I'm going to say. You need to call a lawyer right away. In fact, give me a call because this is my main case type. I help a lot of people who are going through marital problems, who are maybe not being able to get their papers fixed because their spouse is threatening them or anything like that. Give me a call. And the reason why you don't want to wait until things get really bad is when things get really bad, that is when it might get even tougher for you to be able to get yourself out of a situation into a situation where you can have the proper legal help. And sometimes if you wait too long, then you might miss deadlines that you have. For example, if you are in a marriage to a US citizen where your spouse is harming you either emotionally or physically, and you divorce from that spouse, then you may be able to file an application for yourself for a green card, but you do have a deadline, and this deadline is within 2 years of the divorce. Now, another thing that people always say to me is, well, we're separated. I wasn't too sure if they were going to help me with my immigration case, so I didn't think that I needed to talk to a lawyer. And ladies and gentlemen, the thing is that if you have already started an immigration case with your spouse, whether it is for a waiver or a perdón where you have to leave the US, or whether you are waiting for your green card interview in the US, I want you to give me a call, because if the marriage is not working out, if your spouse is saying they want to cancel your application and they want to pull it, or they're saying even worse things, then you may have the option of filing a petition for yourself. And it's really urgent for you to talk to a lawyer, because you don't want your case to get denied, and you don't want to be underneath that time crunch where you have an interview coming up, or where you have to leave and you have to make a tough choice about what to do with your case, and is there any other way of moving forward? All right, so that's the message of the day. I'm going to post my number here in a second on YouTube. So definitely give us a call, 212-248-7907. My assistants, Abel and Anderson, are standing by to take your call and book you for an appointment, okay? So now I'm going to go ahead and start answering some questions, and I see a lot of people here. I see some of my clients. I see some people who have been watching me for a while, and thank you, thank you. So one more thing, I have a plea. If you like watching my videos, if you have been enjoying the messages that I give, please share my videos with a friend or a family member who you think would benefit from them. Knowledge is power, and I can't tell you also how many people who I speak to during a consultation who say, where were you 5 years ago? Where were you 10 years ago? I wish I knew about you sooner. And I too, I wish I knew about them earlier so I could have helped them before they get into a situation where they can't be helped. So definitely share my videos. Knowledge is power, and you never know whose life you might pretty much end up saving by helping them get to somebody who cares like I do. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and answer some questions. Thank you, Maimuna. who's saying thank you for updating and God blessing your entire family and team. Thank you very much. Okay, so I have a question from Roba Chala, who's asking, what's the impact of Biden's proposal on pending asylum cases? Okay, Roba Chala, thank you very much for your question. So as of right now, there's no impact on anything really, because Biden's proposal is still just that. It is just a proposal. But one thing that I do want to share for my asylum applicants, if you have recently filed for asylum within the past year, and you've been told that you need to wait a full year before you can apply for your work permit application, what I want you to know is this: there is a way that you can actually end up applying for a work permit even sooner within the 150 days that used to exist. And that is by joining a couple of organizations called Cada or ASAP. Give me a call if you need assistance with this, because we have been able to get people's work permit applications expedited and even approved within 30 days of filing. And it's really important for you, because I know that waiting a full year for a work permit is unconscionable. And I know that it's very, very hard. So call us today if you need help with expediting your asylum work permit. Okay. I have a question from Alejandra Martinez, who's asking, what visa would we need to apply to bring my stepdaughter from Mexico, and how do we go about it? Alejandra, thank you very much for your question. So if you have a stepchild is considered your child in immigration if you're a U.S. citizen and you get married to the child's parent before they turn 18. So for example, if you're a U.S. citizen, you marry somebody from Mexico and they have a 13-year-old child. Well, as long as you've gotten married before that child turns 18, then that child is considered your legal child for the purpose of immigration. And if they're still in Mexico, the process that you have to undergo to bring that child to the US is called immigrant visa processing, which means that you have to file an I-130 for that child. Even if you're filing for the father at the same time, you actually need to file an I-130 all on their own, because they're considered your immediate relative. So you do actually have to pay the fees, for each person separately. So you have to file an I-130. They usually take about 6 to 10 months to get approved these days. Then you have to do some additional processing and wait for an interview at the consulate at Ciudad Juarez. And then once they go through that interview at the consulate, they'll be issued a stamp in their passport called an immigrant visa, and then they'll be able to come here. Now, it's really important that you start this process right away, because if they age out, if they get too old, then it may no longer be possible. You definitely want to start the application process as soon as possible, because it does take several years. And even if they turn 21, for example, you may still be able to continue processing to bring them here, as long as the I-130 was pending and filed for a little while before they turn 21, okay? So call me if you need some assistance with your case, 212-248-7907. Okay, I have a question from Evelyn, who's asking, my mother does taxes every year and has been in New York since '94. Can I help my mom receive citizenship? I am 24. Evelyn, thank you very much for your question from TikTok. Listen, if you have a mom or dad who's been here for a long time, they've been a good citizen, they've been filing taxes, and you are now 21 or older, and you're wondering, how can I help my mom or my dad? Well, certainly the first step is to call. If your parent entered legally, then you can actually go ahead and do the regular adjustment of status process for them. And when I say they enter legally, what I mean is, were they inspected and admitted into the US? Now, an inspection and admission does not always mean a stamp in their passport, because there are some situations where they might be driving through the border with other people and they get stopped by CBP, and CBP doesn't even look at their passports and just waves them through. That is called a wave through entry. And if your parents have that, then that's actually considered a legal entry, believe it or not. Now, if they showed a US passport or a US birth certificate, that's a different issue. Definitely still call me so I can talk about those things with you. Now, that's one way for your parents to file for a green card here in the US without them having to leave. Now, another way is if they have an employer or a family member who filed an I-130 or an I-140 for them well before this year. So what I mean is, if they have somebody who petitioned for them before April 30th, 2001, and they were also in the US at that time, then they may also be eligible to do the green card process in the US without having to leave, because that application would actually kind of help basically erase that illegal entry and give them kind of like a forgiveness for that illegal entry. But if they have other issues, like they came back and forth and they might have the permanent bar or some other issues, then that may not fix it. So then we have to look to see, does your mother or does your father qualify for any other humanitarian case type where they can possibly get a green card without them having to leave the US? And the three main humanitarian cases that I look at for my clients to help them legalize their status are, number one, T visa cases for trafficking. And T is for trafficking. And this is such an underutilized visa that can really help a lot of people. And what I mean by trafficking is labor trafficking. So if your mom or dad has been in a situation where they have been subject to some really unconscionable treatment by their employer, where the employer essentially used their immigration status against them, maybe forced them to work, forced them to do other things, threaten them with deportation, anything else to control them, then that may qualify them to get a T visa through which they can actually apply for a green card. And the T visa is really great because with the T visa, they can actually, they can still get a green card, even if they enter legally, if they have certain criminal issues, and even if they have the permanent bar that may be fixable through a T visa. The second thing that I look at are VAWA cases. Now, is your mom or dad married to a citizen or to a green card holder who has not treated them well and they've had many marital problems with? That may be a basis for them to be able to legalize. Also, do they have any other children, have any of their other adult children who are US citizens and 21 years old, subjected them to mistreatment? And believe it or not, there are many sons and daughters out there who don't treat their moms or dads too well. And you don't need to have police reports, but if you are a mom or dad and you feel that you have been emotionally harmed by your children, that may be a basis for you to be able to also apply for a green card underneath the VAWA Act. Now, the last thing that I would usually look at for people who don't have anything else is for a U visa. And now a U visa is for victims of certain qualifying crimes. Now, it's a really great tool because you can also help fix the permanent bar. You could also help basically forgive the illegal entry. However, the worst problem with the U visa is that they take such a long darn time. It's taking maybe 10 years right now to get a U visa. However, it is still a good option for people who don't have any other options available, okay? So definitely, Evelyn, definitely give us a call. I would love to talk to your mom or to your dad to see what their options are to help them get a work permit, to help them get a green card, because, especially for parents, I know we just celebrated Mother's Day. We have Father's Day coming up. If you're an immigrant child, you know how much your mom and dad have been through, and it's, they sacrifice a lot. So it's time to see what is possible for them. All right, and I have a question here from Jackie who's saying, I'm joining the Army. Can that help my parents get a green card? The answer legally, yes. This is another thing that I forgot to mention. If you are trying to help fix your parents' papers and you know that they entered illegally, then you know that they may have some issues. However, if you are in the Army, if you are in the military, or you are a veteran and you've been honorably discharged, then you may be able to also help your parents get a green card by requesting something called military parole in place. Military parole in place is a great tool, but the main thing to remember is this: military parole in place only fixes the one illegal entry. If your parents have any other issues like the permanent bar or other criminal issues, then military parole in place may not help them, but it is certainly worth looking at, especially if you know that you are in the military, okay? Thank you very much for that reminder to talk about that. Okay, so I have a question from Cynthia and Aiden who's asking, what if his 10-year ban is almost up, but he's here in the US and I'm a US citizen? Oops, I just scrolled up. So what if his 10-year ban is over, but he's here in the US? Okay, and I'm a US citizen. So here's the thing. If you have a 10-year ban, then you are actually required to serve that outside the US. If you never served it outside the US, then technically it's still unfulfilled. But I'd be happy to look to see what we can do to fix your spouse's status. Give us a call, 212-248-7907. Okay. Leslie's asking, once I turn 21, can I help my mom with green card? She had a legal entry and caught once. Okay, So Leslie, it sounds like your mom may not qualify for the regular adjustment of status, but definitely give us a call. I would love to talk to your mom to see what her options are. And 212-248-7907. Okay, so I'm gonna see what questions I have. All right, I have a question from Bill Joe who's asking, hi, Miss Moumita, I'm planning to apply for my citizenship soon. I make regular trips to Canada. These trips were for the purpose of visiting my wife. I made 29 trips. Is that okay for my citizenship? Okay, all right, so here's the thing, Bill Joe, anyone who is thinking of applying for citizenship, there are two main rules that you have to keep in mind to make sure, to basically calculate whether you are eligible. Number one is the physical presence rule, and number two is the continuous residence rule. The physical presence rule requires that you have been in the US for at least 50% of the time over the past 5 or 3 years, depending on which category you're applying under. Bill Joe, I believe that you're probably applying underneath the 5-year rule. So you have to make sure that you have been physically in the US on US soil at least 50% of the past 5 years before you file for your application. Now, just because you've made 29 trips doesn't necessarily mean that you won't qualify for that, but you have to count each day that you're outside the US very carefully because they do calculate it down. I remember I had one citizenship interview where my clients had made hundreds of trips out of the US for work, and we actually sat there and the officer made sure to count every single day, even though I had already calculated it out. And he actually found that we were off by 1 day, but luckily it was still okay. So you still want to make sure you count each single day that you're outside the US to make sure you meet that threshold physical presence requirement. Number two is you have to show that you have continuous residence. So if you have any breaks outside of the US where you're outside for more than 6 months, you had a trip for more than 180 days outside the US, then that may break your physical presence and you may not have continuous residency. So you have the burden of proof to show that you never abandoned your residency. But I've got to say that if you have a physical presence break of more than 180 days, then it can be very hard to convince USCIS that you still meet the requirements. However, give us a call. I'd love to take a look at your case, 212-248-7907. Okay. All right, so I have a question from Dina Salem who's asking, I've been married for 7 years and hubby has a deportation on IME record, and I petitioned an I-130 interview and hubby got denied back in 2018. We never got denial letter. What are other options? Okay, Dina or Deanna, I'm not too sure how you pronounce your name. Your husband is actually really lucky he never got picked up at the interview. As of right now, what I'd recommend is that you give us a call, 212-248-7907, so I can look to see what your husband's options are. Because if he has a previous deportation order, then we really have to look hard to see what other humanitarian case types he might qualify for, because the I-130 may not work for him at all, okay? Give us a call, 212-248-7907. Okay, So the question from Chris Whitnell who's asking, how long is the process for I-130 taking nowadays? Let's say an illegal entry and that's it. Okay, so if you're filing for an I-130, the I-130 by itself will usually just take between 6 to 10 months to be approved. However, if you have an illegal entry, then you are presumably trying to fix your status here in the US, and then we have to look to see what other ways are possible. You may need a waiver to go outside the US to do a perdón, or you might qualify for other humanitarian case types that don't require you to leave. Definitely give us a call, Chris Whitnell, so I can look at your case and see what your best options are. Okay, let's see what else I have. Melissa Allgreen is asking, can my husband get his residence even if he got his voluntary departure? I don't know if I make sense. Melissa, you do make sense. So if your husband has a voluntary departure and he did not depart, then that means that that voluntary departure converted into an order of removal. And now we have to see if he qualifies for any other humanitarian case type. Otherwise, he would have to depart the US and be outside for about 10 years. If he does depart, he may be eligible for certain waivers and a permission and consent to re-enter the US. It's going to be a little complicated. What I suggest, Melissa, is for you to give us a call, 212-248-7907, so I could analyze this case and let you know what I think the best options are. Okay, Melissa? And thank you for your question. All right. So Hope Has Wings is asking, what about the National Guard, since they don't always deploy but are on every couple of months? So Hope Has Wings, I'm assuming that you're asking about military parole in place, and you're wondering if being a part of the National Guard would still help you qualify your family member for military parole in place. And the answer is yes. National Guard is still, you're still military. You're still helping defend this country. So definitely that qualifies. You do not need to be in active deployment for this to work. And in fact, if you're a veteran who has served honorably, then you can possibly help your spouse or your parent who has an illegal entry get adjusted for a green card in the US without them having to leave, okay? I have a question from someone who's asking, how much is the advance parole for DACA with my office? I suggest you give us a call, because we have to look to see what your specific reasons are so we can see how much work it's going to take for us to do the advance parole. But I'd be happy to do it. And advance parole is a great option for people who have DACA, who are married to US citizens or looking to fix their status in another way. And the only thing that's missing from their case is the fact that they don't have a legal entry, okay? Give us a call. All right. So Mahmoud Baragzai is asking, my brother has a permanent resident card from Germany. How should I invite him to the US? Well, Mahmoud, your brother needs to apply. If your brother has a German passport, then he would probably not need a visa to come to the US. Since he doesn't have a passport, then he would need to apply for a visit visa here. You can write a letter of invitation, but visit visas are actually pretty hard to get and are discretionary on the basis of a consular officer who's going to interview your brother to determine whether he or she thinks that your brother is at risk of overstaying in the US. Okay. Evie Jen, who's asking, my son married a US citizen for 2 years. He did one interview, but he had to be begging his wife to go to the interview. She went last year anyway, and they sent for a second interview. My son has to cancel. Okay, Evie Jen, thank you so much for your question. I think I've actually seen your comments here before. So here's the thing. If you are married to a US citizen and you start the green card process with them and you have an interview, things don't go well because, let's just say, and I know this for a fact because I've seen it happen in so many cases where a couple, they file together, they file the I-130, they file the I-485, they have an interview coming up, and then all of a sudden the spouse stops cooperating. The US citizen spouse starts giving attitude, starts giving problems. They start threatening, they start asking for money, they start saying, I'm not gonna go, or maybe I'll go if you do this. And somehow they might scrape it through and might get to the interview, but the officer suspects foul play because things didn't go well, obviously. Things didn't go well, there was some tension in the room, and they call them for a second interview. Does your son have the ability to now do something for himself? And Evie Jen, I would say you need to have your son give me a call ASAP. Have your son give me a call immediately, because we need to take immediate action to file a self-petition for him if he qualifies. Now, the self-petition will basically take over what the spouse, the US citizen spouse, has filed for him, so that he no longer has to rely on his wife holding the I-130 over his head as though, in an attempt to control his life. All right, Evie Jen, have your son give me a call, 212-248-7907. Now, I know for a fact that I have a lot of people watching me today who are in marriages where they feel some shame at what is going on. And this is what I want you to know. Whether you are a man, whether you are a woman, no matter what country you're from, I have clients from Mexico, Guatemala, Cote d'Ivoire, Senegal, Nigeria, India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, so many different countries, China, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, Macedonia. I have clients from all over the world who are in marriages that's not working out. If your spouse is not treating you well, if your spouse is controlling you, if your spouse is hurting you with their words or with their actions or with their physical actions, it is time to talk to a lawyer, especially if you have already had an interview and now you're being called for a second interview, or you are being told by your spouse that they're going to cancel your process or call immigration on you. The time to take action is today. So I can see whether you can qualify for this sort of case where you file for yourself for a green card so that you are free to leave that marriage where you're being kept under control. All right. All right, so that's it. Make sure you share my videos, make sure you share my message, because there are a lot of people out there who are immigrants who are hurting. And I really strongly feel that I'm so blessed to be able to help people, because there are many lawyers out there who really don't take this sort of case seriously. And they are inclined to not believe you, or they tell you that your case is not strong enough because you never went to the police or you never got a restraining order. And you don't need those things, because the reality is that when you are undocumented in the US, you are afraid of going to the authorities for help. And even I've seen people who already have a student visa, or they already have like some other sort of status, who are in a marriage to a US citizen. Even then, the spouse threatens them and they believe that the spouse has power to control their immigration future. Just give us a call so you can get the help that you need, okay? 212-248-7907. And with that, I hope everyone has a great evening, and I'll see you again next time.